Today we're going to be doing repaints of 1/6 head sculpts and some weathering and details on them. Let's get started. First we need a subject here. We got a old sideshow body, I believe, with a dragon or DML head. It's not a bad head sculpt, not too bad. I'll try to see if it'll zoom in there for you. Still a little cartoon looking. Gonna do a complete strip, repaint, and get to work on it. First thing we got to do is get this head off the body. Grab our trusty hair dryer. Just gonna heat the neck up and let the vinyl or rubber warm up a little bit. It's easier just to pop the head off that way. It only takes about 20-30 seconds. Grab the base here. You can see where it separates. Sometimes these disconnect. You can snap them pretty easy, so I try to put my thumbnail in there and just kind of pop the head off like that. Alright, so now we have our head sculpt we're going to be doing a repaint on, and hopefully make it look a little more realistic. Alright, supplies. First thing we're going to need is acetone. You can pick this up at any hardware store, Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace Hardware, anywhere. But you want just straight acetone, nothing with any additives, lanolin or any of that stuff like fingernail polish remover. So you need a jug of this stuff. There's enough in here to last 30,000 head sculpts. Alright, first thing I do, take the head sculpt, drop him in the acetone. I don't recommend leaving the head sculpt in the acetone for 20 minutes, an hour. It's going to make the vinyl head really soft and swell up. Then when it dries, it's going to shrink even smaller than it was. Not a lot, but it will shrink. Just agitate the head, let it get nice and wet. You can see it's only been a couple of seconds and the paint's already softened up. I don't know how well you can see in the camera there, but it's only been a couple of seconds. I'm already removing, getting down to bare vinyl there. I don't know if you can notice, I'll show you on the hair how easy this is coming off. Alright, real quick, I'll go ahead and scrub the head down with the toothbrush, getting in the cracks of the ears, nose holes, eyes, lips. Make sure you get all that old paint off. If there's a little bit left in the hair, no biggie, we're going to be painting it anyway. Alrighty, there you go. That took, what, about a minute? And he's completely bare. Back to just plain rubber, vinyl, polymer, whatever this stuff is. This is a DML Dragon Head number 96. He's ready to go. I don't recommend rewashing these in soapy water or anything. Let the acetone clean it, let the acetone dry, swirl it in the air there, and it'll dry out in a second. He's ready to go and be painted. This is the most expensive part of your repaint. This is an 8 fluid ounce container, and it is $14 at Hobby Lobby. But it's really good stuff. You don't need Liquitex. You can use Winsor Newton, whatever you like. Just some type of matte medium. What this does, it helps your acrylic paint give a dull matte finish instead of a shiny look, because obviously that's what we're doing. We're trying to get rid of the toy look and make the flesh look more realistic. Matte medium. Next, I use these craft store acrylic paints. They're like $1 a bottle. You can get them at any craft store, even Walmart, any store that sells paint sells this stuff. I got lucky and picked these up. They're like 25 cents a bottle. They were on sale. What's important is the colors for your flesh tones. The most important is raw sienna. Never heard of this company, Delta Creative, but I've been using it for about 6 months now on several head sculpts. Seems to work fine, lasts long, good color. Raw sienna, very important color. Next, some type of chocolate brown, something that looks like milk chocolate. You get some good, I don't know how well the camera's picking that up, but just a good milk chocolate color. Next is a tan, not too light, not too dark. You just want a flesh color, you know, something close to get you started somewhere. Again, this is Delta Creative. It came from Hobby Lobby. It was like 25 cents a bottle. This is called Trail Tan, but every company has their own color. You just want a nice tan base color. And last, a very soft pastel pink. Very soft pink. Almost, I don't know how well it's picking up, but very, very light. You'll use that around the lips and the eyelids and things where your natural pinkish colors are going to be used. If you do go to Hobby Lobby, this is Hydrangea Pink, Trail Tan, Raw Sienna, and this, I have no idea. I think I've had this, well, the date's 2006, just chocolate brown. Alright, the next part I'll talk about is using different acrylic paints. Like I say, I've had good success with these little bottles. I also use Tamiya paints. I really like Tamiya. The flat or matte finish to these is outstanding. Mixability, and of course you would use your X20A Tamiya thinner to thin the paint out so that you have more of like a wash instead of a paint, which I have pre-done here. I've used the Tamiya flat flesh color and I mixed it with the thinner and made a bottle, and I wrote flesh on it, so now it's ready to go. I don't have to dilute this anymore. The flesh color's there and ready to go. It was an empty bottle, so I just used it. With the Tamiya colors, I use XF15, which is flat flesh, XF10, which is flat brown, X27, which is transparent or clear red. It's almost like a candy coating. It's transparent. XF1, flat black. Those are pretty much the 4 colors I use to get my flesh tones out of the Tamiya paints. Okay, let's get started painting. I take another old measuring cup or anything. Just put some regular water in it to clean my brush. You can use brush cleaner, whatever you feel comfortable with. Water comes out of my faucet, so I use water. Okay, I want to take the matte medium. Again, whatever you choose, whether it's Liquitex, Winsor Newton, whatever you can find, just make sure it's matte medium. I put a couple of drops of that in the top corner here. Let's say 5 drops. sienna. Over beside it, I add 2 drop. Well, let's just do 1 drop for now. 1 drop of raw sienna. I'm going to add 1 drop of the tan color. And 1 drop of the light pink color. Now if you notice the palette here, I didn't mix these together yet. I like to keep them separate so I can mix what I need in the separate cups to get some consistency out of it. Very soft, long-haired brush, very soft. You can get these at any craft store. They're cheap. They're just junk brushes, but they're really nice when you have to do light dusting and you just want that very soft touch. Standard detail brush, again, very soft bristles. This is what they call a standard detail brush. It's just, I don't know if you can pick up the size of the actual brush hairs. Another cheapo soft brush, wide but smaller hair to get in smaller detailed places versus your wider brush for the larger places. A number 6 flat brush. The purpose when you're painting these, you don't want brush strokes in your head sculpt. So when you're going at it, if you use a skinny brush, you're going to get all these little thousands of skinny lines all through the head. So you want a soft brush with baby pressure. I mean barely touching to apply your paint. And you want to smooth out those lines so that there are none in the face. Or you can airbrush. I also airbrush. It's just loud, takes forever to clean up, and this is just as quick. And last, a number 3/0 brush. I don't know if you can see that on there. This is a very fine detail brush for doing eyes, lips. It's very fine and very soft. I'll talk more about these brushes as we use them throughout the head sculpt paint. Alright, first thing I do, pick up the head sculpt and my number 6 flat brush. I get it wet. I come into the matte medium. The matte medium there. I drag out a touch of the raw sienna and a touch of the tan, and I start mixing these two together. Another dab of that. Start mixing these two together to get us our darker orange colors for around the ears, under the eyelids. I just get all in the ear here because the sun obviously hits your ears, so you have some more sunburn. I get all around that area, under the eyes, and I'm just kind of lightly dabbing at it to give it some color there. I don't know how well the camera's picking these details up. Get the back of the ear. Pretty much you just want to coat the whole ear, inside the hole. Okay, so at this point you have both ears, around both eyes. You want to do the sides of the nose here. Just put a little paint in there to give it some color. And then underneath the nose. Underneath the chin. Just like that. Alright, now I'm going to clean my brush out here. Dry it off on the towel. Get another dip of water. I'm going to come into the matte medium and just the tan this time. Try not to pick up any of the raw sienna. And if you notice, I'm making a little thicker than milk. You can see it start to run here down the plate. I don't want it to be slopping wet like a wash, but I don't want it to be dry like regular house paint you put on your wall. Just a nice little thicker than milk. Now I go through, I start at the hairline and I pull the paint forward. If you notice, it's kind of bubbling up like it's not accepting it because we have it so thin. We're going to do multiple layers. This isn't like spray paint. You just want to hurry up and get it done. You want to make layer after layer after layer. So it's almost like a wash. I start at the top of the hairline and come straight down the face. Go right over top the darker color that you put down first. And it'll slightly mix those colors together. And it's going to give the look that they're blending the colors on the face. Again, very soft touch, very soft. Underneath the chin, the neck. You notice I haven't gone back to the palette. I'm just blending the color right on the face. Around the back of the neck, behind the ears, and just start at the top and pull that color down over the ears, behind the ears. You're blending your colors right on the head sculpt. Alright, we're going to let this coat dry for about 5 minutes until the glossy shine goes away. The matte medium, as it dries, will make it like a dull matte finish. We're going to come back and add more of the matte medium and tan. Do our second coat. So I'm going to let this dry about 5 minutes and I'll be right back. Okay, it's been about 5 minutes. The head sculpt's dry. You can touch it. We're going to do the same thing again. Take our number 6 flat brush, or whatever brush you like to use, whatever you prefer. I just like these soft flat brushes. Helps keep the lines so you don't see brush strokes in the paint. We're going to do the same thing this time with the brush dry. We're going to go into the matte medium. Touch that tan color again. And very lightly we're going to start building the second layer. Start at the top of the head. Drag your colors down from the hairline. I don't know how well it's picking up there, but over the ears, down the hole, behind the ears. Just drag that color straight down over the face. Starting at the hairline, pulling it down towards the chin. Now we don't want this paint real thick. You don't want it to look like you used Tester's model paint. You want nice thin layers so that you don't bury the details of the head sculpt. I know a lot of people complain about Dragon, DML, you know, they're so behind the times, their head sculpts are horrible. Some of these head sculpts, when they're stripped and repainted, have outstanding details to them if you know how to highlight those and bring those out. Again, working from the hairline to the bottom of the head. And you noticed I haven't gone underneath the chin on this second layer. I've left that a little darker to simulate some shadow and dark space. I don't know how well the camera is going to pick that up. I'm starting at the hairline and dragging straight down, not going under the chin or under the nose. I'm not going under the eyes. It's bouncing over straight down. Keep going over it until all your brush strokes are no longer showing. Let that dry and we're ready to move on to the next step. I know the light's giving a glare there, kind of hard to see, but it's starting to get a decent Caucasian flesh tone to it. I'll let this dry about 5 minutes and I'll be right back. Okay, in this next step I'm going to take my 3/0 fine detail brush. A very soft, fine brush I was telling you about at the beginning of the video. We're going to paint the whites of the eyes. Now that our head sculpt's dry, I'm going to come in and get a nice dab of white. I'm going to paint just the whites of the eyeball. Make sure you don't touch the inside or outside of the eyelids. Just get the eyeball. Another little dab of paint there. Just a wee tiny little dot on the end of the brush there. Start in one corner of the eyeball. It's kind of hard to get this on video, but what I do, I start in the center of the eyeball and I push it down into the crack and then drag it back across. And once I'm down in that crack of the eyeball, I pull the paint back. I turn the head sculpt around and I push it to the other side of the eyeball and pull that paint back. Doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to be doing several layers to make the eye in the direction it's looking. Hope that's picking up well on the video there. Just the whites of the eye, not the eyelids or anything else. Let that dry and we'll move on to the next step. The actual pupil, retina, iris of the eyeball. I don't think it's going to show up on camera because the detail is so small. So I drew this little diagram, just a quick sketch. I'm going to show you how I paint it. You know, the method, the way I do it, so that it shows up better. I'll just use this little sketch that I drew up. The first thing I do, I take my 3/0. Again, I don't know. It's the very fine detailed brush. Soft hairs again. Very fine detail that we painted the whites of the eye with. I'll be using that brush to do these steps. The first thing I do, I take black and I paint a big circle in the center of the eye. Now, I'm going to show you on this diagram because I can also animate it. Depending on where you place the eyeball in the eyeball, the colors in the eyeball will determine the look. You can move it down. He's looking down, kind of a scared look. Move it up. He's looking up. What I generally do is I bring the bottom of this black that I'm going to paint right to the very bottom of the bottom eyelid, like this. So the top is still kind of simulating as if it's under the top eyelid. This rests right on the bottom of the eyelid. You can see, if I were to paint this, I would paint that circle, black circle, right to the bottom of the eyelid, center of the eye. That's a normal stance look, looking forward. Look in the mirror at yourself. You can see, you know, exactly how it's placed in your eye, and try to simulate that on the head sculpt. The next thing I do after the black dries, I go back with the same brush and I pick a color. Blue, green, brown, doesn't matter, whatever you prefer. For this example, I'm using blue. I paint a blue circle over top of that black. So now the blue is actually on top of that black. And again, I center that inside the circle. It's not cooperating. I center that so there's equal space, top, bottom, left, and right. So some of that blue is actually underneath the top eyelid as well. I don't want a complete circle like an eclipse. He's going to look like he's scared. A more relaxed, normal pose. Tuck the blue, simulate tucking the blue behind. I know the paper's curling and it isn't the best. After that blue dries, I go back again and I make a very tiny black pupil. I paint that in the very center of that blue. Now we have the look of an eyeball. Depending on where you put this in the eyeball, centered, up, down, left, and right, can change the look of the head sculpt depending on the look you're going for. Standing at attention, scared, looking left, looking right. So another thing that's nice with the diagram is I can now move this to show you what I'm talking about if he were to look left or right. So obviously if you were going to have him look this direction, you would move it so that the top, bottom, and this side is all tucked in. Now he's looking one direction. You can do the same thing on the other side, move it the other way. You want it tucked behind that eyelid when you're painting it to simulate that look of him looking that direction. It's not the best diagram to use, but it's simulating. You can see the idea. And of course, you know, pinch it down further to where the top is just touching. Gives more of a frightened look. He's looking to that side but scared, versus having it tucked in more to the top or centered, where he's just looking that way, for instance through a rifle scope or a pair of binoculars. But that's pretty much how I paint the eyeball. I paint the black in the center, favoring the upper eyelid. It's tough getting it tucked in. Touching, you know, favoring the top eyelid, just touching the bottom eyelid, center the pupil right in that. Now the next step to this, there's two ways you can do this. You can either go back with white and simulate light glare, as if light were glaring off of you know, a light source, the sun, the moon, whatever, flashlight. Now you can see how the realism just came to it by adding that one little tiny dot of white. I don't recommend putting that in the very center of the pupil. He's going to look like he's on heroin or a zombie or something else. Split that white dot between the pupil and whatever color you choose. You can see how it's half on the pupil, half on the blue iris color. And of course you can put that white anywhere you want it. You can change it towards the top side, you know, depending on where your light source is coming from. Is it the sun, the lights overhead? Is it headlights off of a vehicle, which would be more of a straight on look? You can bring it to this side, wherever your light source, whatever direction he's going to be. The other method, instead of using the white paint, you can use some type of clear varnish. acrylic clear gloss, whether it's floor polish with future shine, whatever you choose, just any type of high gloss acrylic. You can buy a small bottle, you know, in the Liquitex format, like the matte medium. You can get gloss, whatever works best for you. Or, like I say, you can go back and simulate that white dot or that light by just painting the white dot. I like the gloss because it does the whole eyeball and it makes it wet and teary-eyed looking, so that it's more realistic and not so fake simulated look. And then we'll go on to the next step. Alright, I don't know if you can see on the camera here. I'll try to get it close and allow it to focus so you can see how I've done the eye there. Not the best paint job today, but just trying to give you the idea how I do this. And it's hard to get expression out of a plastic straight-faced head, so one of the things you can do in your repaints is change the eye direction so that, you know, he's looking different directions, doing different things, instead of just standing there like a mannequin. But we'll move on to the next part. Okay, in this section I'm going to be painting the hair on the head sculpt. I'm going to use brown, and I'm actually just going to use that same milk chocolate color brown that I was talking about in the beginning of the video there. Just going to put a couple of drops on my palette, maybe 2 drops. And 1 drop of the matte medium. I'm going to put this right in the middle because I'm going to mix this up. And again, I go with my trusty soft flat brush. Again, use whatever you like. I just prefer the soft flat ones. You can cover a lot of area with it. Now, when we were painting the face itself, we started at the top of the hairline and pulled down this direction over the whole face. What we're going to do now is flip the head around and do just the opposite. We're going to start at the hairline. We're going to start here and pull everything this direction. Alright, mix my paint up here. 2 drops of brown, 1 drop of matte medium. And I'm just going to coat the whole hairline with this. Wipe some of this excess paint off I just mixed. Okay, so we're going to start at the hairline and pull your paint back. Try to avoid getting it on the forehead or behind the ears, and just work it back. Make sure you get through all the cracks and crevices there to fill in. Once I get this painted, I'll be right back. Okay, now that I've got the hair painted there, I've done 2 coats, front to back, the whole way around the head. You have a hard paint line where the hair meets the head. We're going to take care of all that in the weathering section of the video to blend and make things a little better. Next, I'm going to paint the eyebrows the same color that I used to paint the hair with the superfine detail brush. Instead of doing that on video, I'm going to show you how I do the eyebrows on this little diagram again here. It's pretty simple, but I use my fine detail brush. What I do, I dip in my paint or whatever. When I come to the eyebrow, I don't really paint Obviously you don't want to stick your brush and do this. You're going to look like a 90-year-old woman with an eyebrow pencil. We don't want that look. So what you want to do is dip into your paint and then come up and just touch. If this was the eyebrow here, we're just going to touch, 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 the whole way around the eyebrow. Now the secret to this is, obviously your eyebrow's thicker by your nose than it is out by the end of your eye. So as you're coming around, touch, 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 as you get to the end, make sure you rotate your brush as if you're marching in a circle. You know, you don't want both legs going the same. You want to stand there and move one more. So take that brush and rotate it as you touch to create the eyebrow. Might take some practice. Keep in mind this is water-based acrylic. If you mess up, you can take your rag with a little bit of water on it and lightly go over it and just wipe it off and start over. I'm going to go ahead and paint the eyebrow on the Head Sculpt, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, now that I've got the hair finished, the eyes, the eyebrows, skin tone, basic skin tone, what I'm going to do now, this serves two purposes. I'm going to go back to my matte medium. I'm going to put 2 drops on my palette. When this stuff dries on its own, it's very dull, matte, flat. Helps seal the head. So when we go back to do washes, we don't wipe off everything we just did. It's going to seal it. And it's also going to give some texture to the skin. What I do, I take my matte medium and a long, soft brush. But this time, instead of touching and dragging, we're going to use the very tip of the brush, and we're actually just going to lightly dab the whole entire face, neck, ears. This will seal it and give it a little bit of a texture when it dries. So I go into my matte medium, load the brush up, and I just dab. And this is just going to give us some texture on the whole sculpt when it dries. Just enough to give it that little bit of porous looking skin. Obviously you don't want to do across the bridge of the nose because your skin's tight there. You don't want to do in the corners of your eyes too much unless you've had facelifts, but definitely around the beard, chin, neck area. Just keep dabbing at it and it'll start to dry and form a texture. This will help when we go back later to highlight that stubble on the face to give the 5 o'clock shadow look of a couple-hour-old beard. I'll continue doing this and check back in a minute. Okay, I've finished the matte medium, just dabbing it all over the face there. It's starting to dry. I don't know if the camera's going to pick this up. I'll try to get a steady close-up to where you can see there's a slight texture. Maybe the glare of the light will show you. Just gives a look of flesh, just a little bumpy texture. Okay, we'll let that completely dry and move on to the next step. Okay, next we're going to do the lips and the inside corners of each of the eyes. I'm going to do that quick and I'll show you what I mix up. I use that very soft light pastel pink, the hydrangea pink. I'm going to use 1 drop of that. No matte medium this time. We do want a semi-gloss look because it is lips. And I'm going to use the Tamiya Clear Red transparent red, the X27. You can use a, along this line you can use transparent red, or you can mix any color red you have with a little bit of the matte medium to thin it out, or water. You just want a very slight dab of this anyway. Alright, and also we're going to use 1 drop of the raw sienna. Okay, I'm going to take my 3-0 fine detail brush. I'm going to dip it in the transparent red. Just get a little bit on there. You only need a little tiny dab. And I'm going to drag some of that pink and a touch of the sienna. And I'm going to start working that pink into the raw sienna and clear red until I get just that right mix of flesh lip color. I'm going to paint this on the head sculpt, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I put that pink mixture on the lips, and then across the lips there, and then in each corner of the eye just make a wee tiny little dot. And next we'll be doing some weathering to give it some detail. Little 5 o'clock shadow type look, a couple hours unshaven, some dirt, and just general weathering, make him look more like a soldier and not a model in a GQ magazine. Alright, be right back. In this section we're going to highlight the hair with a lighter tan. We went with the brown, so we're just going to highlight it with a lighter tan. This is dry brushing, if you're not familiar. It's a pretty simple process. Just get an old paper towel, something, fold it up. We're going to use a stiff dry brush. This is a very stiff, you can probably hear the bristles. Very stiff, hard brush. What we're going to do is dip this in the paint and then wipe it off on the paper towel so that there's very little, almost no paint left. And then we'll go over just lightly brushing, and it'll highlight any of the high areas, leaving the low areas dark and the higher areas light. I'll do that quick and be right back. Okay, like I was saying, just take a little bit of paint there, put it on your towel so that it's almost dry, and just drag over, lightly touching. It's going to highlight those higher areas. Try not to get it down in the cracks, just let it drag the surface to give those highlights. And that's about it. You can see on top of the head how the darker color stays in the cracks, the lighter color you just brushed across the top of the head sculpt there. Just giving some little highlights and details. Alright, we'll be back with the next section. Okay, we're going to get down to the last step in this process, or close to the last step. You'll see I've changed head sculpts here. This is just an old dragon DML figure. Not all the time is it necessary, or do you want to completely redo, repaint, strip a head sculpt down to bare vinyl and start over. Here's an example I'm going to show you. Now, the head that we've been working on throughout the video, I'll do the same thing to this, but I wanted to show you that if you have a fairly decent paint head sculpt, something that you want to work on, but you want to bring out some of the details in the hair and the face. This is a step that I use to do this, and you can do it on any of your head sculpts. Just make sure the head that we were working on, just make sure you seal it with some type of sealer so that you don't wash off the paint you've already put on. Okay, so we're going to be working on this head sculpt and show you the process that you don't have to do a complete repaint. We can just add the details to something that's already finished and bring out some of the quality. Alright, first, in this step I use denatured alcohol. Again, you can buy this at any hardware store, Lowe's, Home Depot, Ace Hardware, or whatever's equivalent wherever you're at. Denatured alcohol, it doesn't matter the company, it's all the same stuff. I take some of this and I pour it into a jar. I use a baby food jar, and the only thing I stick in this jar is the brush that I do these faces with. I don't clean brushes that have pink or green or orange or metallic colors, because those will settle in the bottom of the jar, and when you come back to do this process you're going to add the pigments from those back into the mix, and we don't want that. We only want the flesh colors in this jar. So you just get a little jar of the denatured alcohol, and during this step I'm going to be using the Tamiya colors. We're going to use the clear red, flat flesh, flat black, and flat brown. And what I'll do here, it's only going to take one little tiny dot of each of those colors. I take the lid to the baby food jar and I'll just take a small little brush. Doesn't matter, we're just going to load the palette with color, so we'll just use this standard brush. What I do here, I put a drop of each color on the palette. So I'll take the lid there just to show you. I'll just take a smudge of brown and put it on the palette. Just like that. Clean the brush. I'll put the same amount of tan. Just put it on the palette, because we're going to be mixing a wash to put down in the cracks. I'll do the same for the red and the black, and I'll be right back. Okay, now that I have all four colors on the palette, you can see there I have the brown, tan, red, and the black. We'll be mixing those colors into a very runny, liquidy wash with the denatured alcohol, and using the lid just as the mixing palette. We're going to need two brushes. The standard brush, soft, long-haired standard brush there. This is going to be applying the wash. And then your soft, long-haired brush to apply the denatured alcohol to the head sculpt. Now you'll notice on this figure I'm leaving the uniform and everything on it just to show you how easy this is to bring some details into this head sculpt. First thing you want to do is load your brush up with the denatured alcohol. Get it nice and wet, and we're just going to brush the whole entire face. This breaks down the surface tension on the sculpt so that your washes will get down into the cracks and crevices. Just wipe the whole face, all the hair, everything, get it nice and wet behind the ears, inside the ears, and just load that up and get it nice and wet. Okay, now underneath the chin. Now that your head sculpt's nice and wet, coated with all the denatured alcohol, switch over to your smaller standard brush, get some denatured alcohol, come into your browns, some tan, some red, And you'll see here, this is really runny. This is like a wash instead of paint. This is like thinner than milk, but a little thicker than water. And I'll drag some of that black in to dirty it up. We want a grungy, dirty look down in the cracks and crevices. Okay, if this dries out, it doesn't matter, because as soon as you put the denatured alcohol, the solvent thins it again. Okay. So we want to make sure the head's nice and wet. Talking there, it dried up. Get the head nice and wet so everything gets down into the cracks. Okay. I go into my little mix there in the center of the palette. I don't know how well you can pick that up on camera, but what I want to do, I'm going to touch right in the center between the eyes, and you can see how that spreads out. Let me try to get up here where you can see down in the crack of the nose, up into the nose holes, through the mouth. We're just making a mess, basically. Get a little bit more. I'm going to get down into the ears, all the cracks and parts, the cheeks there. Just put all that right in there and darken all that up with your wash. Maybe a little bit across the eyebrows, the forehead, that little dent underneath the nose above the top lip. Just fill in all those spots there. Okay. Now you can see at this point he's a mess. Looks like a kid got a hold of some chocolate or something. It's a mess. Let this dry for about 30 seconds. In the next step, there's two ways you can do this. For the fine detail area parts, you can use your brush to clear off the surface, or you can use a rag. I'm going to use a rag to speed it up and show you how I do that. I'm going to get underneath the eyes here a little bit too, like there we go. Oh yeah, now he's looking real messy. He's looking pretty rough. Looks like some kind of goth dude going to a 9 Inch Nails concert or something. Alright, now I just take a rag, find a clean section of the rag there, just kind of roll it up into a little stick type thing, kind of like a huge Q-tip. You can use Q-tips, you can use paintbrushes, a rag, whatever's easiest. When you're cleaning this, you don't want to put a lot of pressure and rub. It's going to make it shiny. You just want to wipe very soft and easy, just cleaning off the surface. I'll dip this in my denatured alcohol, get it wet, and I just lightly clean the surface. And if you'll notice, for instance on the forehead and the cheeks, you're cleaning up, but yet it's staying in the cracks. The wash is going down into the crack, the recessed areas. Do this over the entire head sculpt, cleaning everything off that the rag will reach. Across the ears, under the lips and chin, across the bridge of the nose. Alright, now you'll notice there's places that the rag couldn't quite get to because it was too thick. In the eye section here, underneath the eyes, around the nose, kind of globbed up there. Around the ear, there's a mess here and back behind. Now, this is where you can use a Q-tip or your smaller brush and go in and clean those areas out. Just take the brush, and just kind of go in and soften that up and drag it across the head and dilute it so that it softens up. You just spread that out a little bit, almost giving him a dirty, grungy look like he's been out in the battlefield. Pretty easy process. Just thin it out so that it's not overbearing and too dirty. You don't want to look, like he's been swimming in oil. Just kind of thin it out there and clean it up some. Then again, I take the rag and just kind of wipe everything to smooth out any hard lines you might have where you can see behind the ear there's like a dirt ring, so to speak. I'm going to clean that off. And that's pretty much it. From there, you can go back and add chalks or pastels or whatever you want. Now you can see he cleaned up pretty good. I'm doing this quick just to show you. But you can see how it brought the detail out in the ears, the recesses around the nose, and the cracks of the eyes. Brought some of those details out pretty good. Once again, that's without a complete repaint. That's just taking a standard old dragon sculpt and putting those washes in to give him a little more detail and depth so it doesn't look so plastic toyish. Alright, we'll see you on the next part of the video.